Hello, everyone. Well, thank you for attending this presentation. I know I'm between you and lunch, so thank you for being here. So today I wanted to introduce you to the Open Cap Table protocol. So I'm Thibauld, I'm the CTO at Fairmint. First, always useful to go through some definitions because it's a domain that is brand new to crypto. So what is a security? A security is a financial instrument, okay, that is defined by a legal contract. And there's like two types of securities, and it's important to make the difference between the two. The first one is like debt securities, right, which represent a loan to somebody or a company. And the one that interests us today is equity security. Equity security represent ownership in a company, right? And so it comes with additional rights, like financial rights, legal rights, voting rights. And this ownership is tracked in something that we call a cap table, right? So a cap table is a capitalization table. It tracks who owns what in a company. And then two other definitions, like transfer agent. Transfer agent in the US market, because all this talk is mostly going to be US market oriented, because this is my bread and butter and what I operate on. Transfer agent is a regulated entity that is in charge of handling the transfer of securities, meaning like the recording when securities have been transferred. And the regulated entity that actually executes the transactions of equity is a broker-dealer. That being said, let's move on. So it doesn't, you haven't missed it. The SEC in the US has made a complete shift over the past 6 months, right? Like before crypto was persona non grata, now like they are open arms with crypto, and this is like Chair Atkins, one of his latest tweets. So saying that, yeah, everything is going to be tokenized. And so this is how Wall Street heard it, okay? So basically it's game on, right? And we see that, like people who would not return our calls like a year ago, now they're all like banging at the door. So there is a huge difference if you're in the US. So the question is, how do you put equity on chain, right? Is it as simple as just like creating a token that represents a share of a company? I wish it was. It is not. It is more complicated than this, because yeah, this is basically, so Fairmint has been around since 2019, and so we had our fair share of trial and errors. And so this is probably like the first version of Fairmint, right? Hey, it's easy. Let's create a token that represents equity and issue it to investors. The problem is you realize soon enough that, okay, it's very easy to issue a token on chain. It's very hard to move it. And why is it hard to move it? It's because all the intermediaries that you need from a regulation standpoint to interact with when you want to transfer equity, they're all off-chain. The cap table vendor is off-chain, transfer agent is off-chain, the broker-dealer is off-chain. So that means that by creating your token, you actually added complexity instead of removing complexity. And so this is why we were like, okay, there must be a better way. But first, a little help for you guys, because like the space is not very hot. A lot of people is talking about like on-chain stocks, on-chain equity, but there's a lot of fluff, but a lot, and I mean it. And so here's a little bingo card. If you ever hear these type of claims regarding on-chain equity or on-chain stocks, your bullshit-o-meter should like stop being triggered. Okay, so our solution doesn't need KYC. Yeah, right. Impossible. You can trade it on Uniswap. No, sir, you cannot. Like same with like Aave. You cannot use your shares as collateral on Aave. Not yet. You cannot do that today. We remove all intermediaries. No, like when it comes to securities, you will have at least one intermediary. You cannot have 0 intermediaries, or at least at scale. Like it's a simplification. You don't need a broker-dealer, stuff like this. So this is like, keep that in mind. If you hear that, you should have little alarms ringing in your head. So the solution that we are implementing and which occurred to us is like, you need to break free from the off-chain infrastructure. And the only way to do that is to actually record the source of truth of who owns what, meaning your cap table, on-chain. If you do that, then now you can have really end-to-end on-chain equity transactions, because the source of truth of who owns what is now actually on-chain. It's not in a spreadsheet, in a private database somewhere. So that's what Fairmint is all about. So Fairmint, we're an SEC-regulated transfer agent since 2023, and we created the Open Cap Table protocol to turn cap tables into on-chain smart contracts. So in a glance, the Open Cap Table protocol, so obviously it's fully open source, MIT license, compatible with any EVM blockchain. It's an implementation of the Open Cap Table format. Why is it important? Because there's a lot of knowledge in cap tables, and today it's mostly lawyers who deal with cap tables. And so you cannot just invent a new format, how to store and record a cap table. The good news is we, as well as like all these lawyers that you see here in the US, we created the Open Coalition, the Open Cap Table Coalition, which basically says, hey, let's create the first open source format for capitalization data. And so what the Open Cap Table protocol is we took this format and we implemented it on-chain. It's privacy preserving, and it's token agnostic, meaning it doesn't come by default with any sort of token. It records the ledger, it puts on the ledger the story of your cap table and all your transactions, but without necessarily having a token. And this delivers on the promise of on-chain equity, meaning like you can now self-custody. Like, what are the benefits of on-chain equity? We don't do that for just the sake of doing it. Self-custody. So you have like direct asset ownership on your wallet. You see your position on like the companies you invested in. You have programmability. So instant settlement, like atomic swaps, automated compliance, borderless markets. Of course, like by definition, you're global from day one, full traceability, and last but not least, composability. And this is very important because this is, I think, the most exciting part about on-chain equity is that it opens up a brand new design space on what you can do with your equity from the issuer side, the company side, and from the investor side. So from the investor side, for example, you can collateralize your equity to take out cash. From the investor side, you can unlock liquidity much more progressively than you can do today. Imagine, for example, if you were to say, hey, you know what? We want to open up some liquidity on our stocks, but we want the price to be X. And that's the only price because the board decided that the price was X and will only allow like 100 more investors at this price. This is very hard to do, like, and very lawyer-consuming stuff in the real world today. Like, the goal with on-chain equity is like just in a few clicks, you set this up. And then if you want to say, hey, you know what, there's actually a lot of buy pressure. Let's do some price discovery. Let's increase, like we said, price was X. What about we say price is now between X and Z? Like, and so these are all the things that are technically possible in the paper world, but practically impossible to do. If you want to learn more about the Open Cap Table protocol, you can go, like we published a full white paper, so I encourage you to read it. It really details the entirety of the protocol. And it's live today. Like, we've been using it, we've built it, we've been using it ourselves at Fairmint, and so we already onboarded more than $1 billion of equity using the Open Cap Table protocol. And the ambition is huge. What we want to do is basically replace the DTCC. So what is the DTCC? It's very big, but it's very unknown. The DTCC is like the Depository and Trust Clearing Corporation. That's this big monster thing in the middle of the US public markets. Because what it does is basically, it's the centralizing entity who holds all the shares of all the public companies. And it's the entity that says, okay, like Robinhood, you have 1 million Apple shares. Like Charles Schwab, you have 2 million Apple shares. And so this is basically the database where all equity is recorded today. And as long as you depend on the DTCC, you have a problem. You cannot really do on-chain equity properly. And this is, by the way, this is the public market, meaning like one transaction on the public market, like there's 9 intermediaries. Like when you click on that little button, there's 9 intermediaries. And what is very important to understand is that the private market, there's none of this. Meaning at least the public market, we can say it's efficient, right? It works well. In the private market, all of this is replaced by lawyers. So it's very slow, it's very costly. And so this is why we think that the most value that the Open Capital protocol can bring first is on the private market. Like basically, the Open Capital protocol, you can think about it as like a DTCC for the private market. It brings an infrastructure that is much needed on the private market. And yeah, so if with the Open Capital protocol, basically, if you want an idea, is that right now, like you cannot trade equity on cap tables because cap tables are in a private database, they are disconnected. This is why at some point when you want to go public, you need to take your shares, you need to list on a national exchange, you need to bring your shares to the DTCC. There's a whole process, it's very complicated. Now, if your cap table is a smart contract, well, every market participant can now trade directly equity from your smart contract. It is extremely powerful, and this is how you break free with the current infrastructure of equity transactions. And that's it. There's for a few minutes, I think. So thank you very much. If you want to drop me a note, so I'm Thibauld. If you want to talk business, talk to my co-founder. So that I don't have to do the introduction myself. So Joris is the CEO of Fairmint. And that's that. And if you're a founder and you want to future-proof your company and save a lot of money, stop paying for Carta, stop paying for all these cap table solutions, just onboard on Fairmint today.
Thank you very much, Thibauld.
Thank you.
Insightful question. Do you have any question? Yeah.
So I'm not familiar with the term regulated DeFi. So can I use this on Uniswap, for example?
So good question. So regulated DeFi, what we mean by regulated DeFi is that today you cannot use Uniswap, for example, because in the US, I'm talking US, right? In the US, to make an equity transaction, a broker-dealer needs to be involved. So regulated DeFi is basically the same type of contracts, like lending contracts or like market maker contracts, but that have been deployed and managed by a broker-dealer, right? So today, if you ask me, where is regulated DeFi, where do I use it? It's not yet there. We are building actually, like this is why we're building the entire stack from scratch to make that happen. But that's the only way you can do that. And this is why, by the way, I had a little, like supplement, like to compare like Robinhood, like everything that has been announced lately. And they all have like tweaks, right? Like it's not really stocks, or if it's really stocks, then they exclude all the principal jurisdictions. And this is why like there's a race today to bring equity on chain. And so people are being very tactical in finding workarounds on how to make it look like on-chain stocks, but in most cases it's not. And so this is why like we really thought this from first principle, and we say, okay, if we are to bring equity on-chain, we need to bring cap tables and the source of truth of equity on-chain.
I have another question, if that's possible. Yeah. So you say it's private. So do you mean, so is it confidential or private? So, and I mean, does the system know who I am or not?
So yeah, the way the Open Capital works is there's an off-chain component and an on-chain component. Obviously, we don't put PIIs on-chain or stuff like this. So there's like a database that basically stores the sensitive information and then pushes on-chain all the transactions and all, but in a completely anonymized way.
Okay.
So it definitely works for the US. Does it just work for Delaware companies, or how about EU entities like the coming EU Inc. maybe, or I mean in Germany and Austria we still need notaries, which is a very
Yeah, so unfortunately we're laser focused on the US right now because our thinking is like if we can make it work in the US, it's going to work everywhere else because the US is the most complex and difficult jurisdiction to go heads on. And also everything moves a lot right now, right? And so in Europe, we looked at in the past a little bit, like, but there's no real united European framework.
Maybe there's the EU Inc. soon.
So exactly, like fingers crossed, you can hear I'm French, even though I live in the US. So I'm always rooting for Europe in the part of me, and I hope Europe does it well this time. But yeah, like the more you can be integrated, the better.
And in the US, is it just for like a Delaware company or also other types?
Oh, it's also all sorts of corporation as long as you have shares. So like for LLCs, it's a bit different, but usually LLCs, you don't need to manage shareholders as much. It's simpler. Most of the companies who grow and in the end have the ambition to IPO or get acquired and stuff like this are all C Corps. They don't need to be from Delaware, though. Like it can be any C Corp.
Okay, thank you.
One last question.
All good?
Okay, thank you, Thibault.
Thank you very much.